and they could see the levels of diversity and representation in high places for some people of color. They could see someone like a President Obama. They could see the thoroughly multicultural popular culture that we share and think that we had made all of this stupendous progress. But here's the problem. Historically, those of us called white have never really thought there was a problem. It's not just in 2017. We didn't think there was a problem 50 years ago. That may seem shocking to you to hear that because we have this impression that everybody joined the civil rights struggle. Right? And white folks will tell you they all marched with Dr. King. Right? If all the white folks who told me that they had marched with Dr. King had actually marched with Dr. King, we wouldn't be having to have this conversation anymore. Right? But the reality is, even at the height of the civil rights struggle, most white Americans didn't think we had a problem. 1963, the Gallup organization has a poll, a broad-based poll of white Americans, and it asked, do you think that, quote unquote, racial minorities are treated equally in your community, in housing, education, and jobs? Now, of course, it's 1963, y'all. The answer is no. Civil Rights Act hasn't even been passed. Voting Rights Act hasn't been passed. Fair Housing Act hasn't been passed. It's the year of the March on Washington, for God's sake. The answer is no, folks are not being treated equally, but 2 out of 3 white folks asked that question said, yes, everything's fine. In 1962, Gallup asked white folks, do you think black children have the same chance to get a good, high-quality education as white children? Now, come on, it's 1962. It's 5 years after the Little Rock crisis. It's only 8 years after Brown v. Board. We know the answer to this question, and yet when asked it, 85 out of 100 white folks said, sure, they have exactly the same opportunities to get a good education as our children. Now, that is a level of denial so profound as to border on delusional. But there it was among people who I assume were otherwise functional adults. They remembered to pay their rent. They remembered to keep food in the fridge. They remembered to clean out the cat pan, walk the dog, wash their hands after using the bathroom, right? These are people who can function, and yet they had no idea about the nation that they lived in. They had no idea about the lived experiences of their black and brown brothers and sisters, millions of people of color living a very different reality. Why? It's not because those white people were bad people. It's not because they were unfeeling, uncaring, horrible folks. It's because they did not have to know any better. They could be in denial and suffer no consequence. What was going to happen to them if they didn't know the truth? It wasn't going to be on the test. And by that, I mean whatever test you had to take to graduate from high school, get into college, graduate from college, get into med school, law school, business school, graduate school, get a professional certification or license in any profession of your choosing. You didn't have to know black and brown truth. And you could still be considered a competent American adult. You could still be considered educated and not know the basic reality of your brothers and sisters. And that, my friends, hasn't changed. Whatever you think has, and a lot of things have. I'm not saying there hasn't been change, but the one thing that hasn't is we still don't have to know the truth. It is still not on the test. People of color have to know our truth. Yes. People of color have to know our truth at least as well, if not better than we do, and they better be prepared to spit it when we ask for it. Right? They better be prepared to regurgitate it on that exam in order to graduate. They better be prepared to regurgitate it on that ACT, that SAT, that exit exam to get out of high school. But we don't have to know their reality. We have the privilege of being oblivious. It's like that movie, The Matrix, right? Where Morpheus gives Neo the 2 pills and asks him to choose. You can take the blue pill and the story ends. You wake up and you can be oblivious to everything that's been going on, or you can take the red pill and I can take you down the rabbit hole and show you how deep it goes. You can see what's really going on in this society. And Neo takes the red pill and all of a sudden he sees, right, what's really going on. To be a member of the majority group, the dominant group, in this case, white folks, is to be on the blue pill all of your life. It is to be on a blue pill IV drip, walking around not even knowing that it's there. And people of color ask us, don't you see the racism? And we're like, no, because blue pill, right? We don't have to see it. It doesn't mean we're bad people. It doesn't mean we're uncaring people. It doesn't mean we're all a bunch of racist bigots. It does mean that people of color know a little something that we don't. We might want to start listening and paying attention. We have to destroy that denial because that denial makes it impossible to move forward and to act, right? If white folks were so wrong, even in the 60s when it was blatant, what are the odds that those whites who say racism isn't a problem now have suddenly figured it out? Like if we couldn't even get it right when it was up in our face on television every single night, right? that I'm not going to trust our judgment in 2017 when folks say that it isn't a problem. I'm just not going to do that. Third thing, we have to stop pretending that these inequalities we're trying to address, like school inequalities, are an accident.